want to level up your Photoshop skills and learn the essentials, stay tuned because that's what we're doing today. I'm also going to be giving you a bunch of free resources for you to be able to work alongside us. So let's go ahead and jump in. Hi, hello. I'm Andrew Hochradel. Let's hop into Photoshop. And the first thing that I want to show you is down in the description. Down below in the description, there is a link. Go ahead and click on that link, and that link is going to take you here. And yes, I'm floating in the center of the screen because the interface of Photoshop is a little bit different. So if I look weird in the middle, that's where I need to be so I can show you everything. So you can see here, if you click on the link down in the description, you will get this file. Go ahead and select the little dots on this file and hit download. That will allow you to download this file. And once you're there, go ahead and just click on that file and it will open up in Photoshop. All right, so I want to make sure everything's scaled correctly. So there are two things that you need to do in Photoshop. You need to go to Window and then do Workspace and do Essentials Defaults, right? That'll be just the default. So click on Essentials. That'll make sure that your workspace looks the same as mine. The next thing that I want you to do is hover right over here in the bottom left. You can click and hold and make sure you have the hand tool, right? And what I want you to do is just double click on the hand tool. And that will size up this composition so that we can look at everything. So let's go ahead and hop in. The first thing that I want to teach you about Photoshop. Photoshop is a pixel-based program. And what that means is when we zoom in here, everything is made of tiny little squares. And you can see even on these letters that everything is a tiny square. What this means is when you're doing details and when you're changing and augmenting things, you are augmenting the actual pixels. You're moving the boxes around as you work in Photoshop. What this means as well is at this size, it might be fine. If you try to blow something up to a really large size, it's just going to show these pixels, right? So when you're working in a certain size, you want to make sure that you're working in the correct size, or you want to maybe explore a vector-based program like Adobe Illustrator if you're working at very large sizes. All right, so let's go ahead and double click on that hand tool again. And right there, we have our interface. So there are a couple things I want to point out here. This white space that is in the center, this is called our artboard. And an artboard is just the area that you'll be working. It's the window to everything that you will create. Artboard. The next up I want to show you is the toolbar. Over on the left are our tools. This is our tool bag, our toolbar, everything that we need to create an awesome composition. And you can kind of click through these. And I'm going to show you the basics of Photoshop, but here's what I want you to do. Here's what your homework is. Click on every single thing. Click on all the things, experiment. There is no wrong way to do design, only different ways. So explore in your own way, learn on your own time. And that's how I learned, is I went through and just clicked on every single thing to see what it did to help understand how I could design a little bit better. So over here, we have a bunch of tools, and the tools that I do want to point out are the Move tool right up here. The hotkey for that is V. I also want to point out the Magic Wand tool. We'll be using that a little bit today. And then I want to point out the Type tool. We'll be looking at that today as well. So those are three that you need to pay attention to during this time. All right, so those are all your tools. Go explore them on your own time. Right below that are the fill and stroke. So if you're working with a shape, this is going to be your fill and stroke. The fill is the color inside, the stroke is the color around. Also, if we're working with a brush, this is going to be the color that we are brushing with. If you want to change these, you can use the hotkeys X to switch them back and forth, or D to reset them to black and white. So X switches them, or D resets them to black and white. All right, swinging around here past me over onto the side is the Layers panel. This is probably the most important panel in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag this up so that we can see a little bit more here. Excuse me, my goodness. The Layers panel is going to be where we are working on pretty much everything here in Photoshop. Everything is separate, and using the Layers panel, you can turn things on or off depending on what you want to see. So let's say that we don't need to know that this is layers anymore. We can click and it will turn off that layer, right? Make it invisible. When we export, anything that we do, it's basically deleting that layer, but putting it in kind of a holding zone. You can also turn off multiple layers by clicking and dragging over that little eye, and it will turn off multiple layers right there. So as you start painting and building, you'll want to be working on different layers for everything, just so you have more control. The way to make a new layer is just to click on this little plus button down in the corner. That will make a new layer for you, and you'll see that these little check marks are see-through. So anything that has those check marks is see-through. We're going to grab the brush tool, and I'm just going to show you real quick right over here, or you can hit B. And we're just going to click and drag, and you can see, boom, we've painted on Photoshop. If you want to change the hardness of the brush, which is the amount of kind of wispiness of that brush, you can right-click and then just slide this hardness down, and it's going to make it so that it's very wispy now, so you can draw with it. So if you're doing digital painting, using this brush is very helpful, especially as you start to build things up. And you can see it is on its own layer, so we can turn that off, and that layer just simply disappears and goes away. Next, we have our color panel, and you can see we have our stroke and fill up here as well, but we also can pick some colors. We have swatches, we have gradients, we have patterns, all kinds of great resources for us to play around with here. I'm going to go to swatches, and I'm going to click on this red. This is a really nice red, and I'm going to make a new layer, and to name that layer, I'm just going to double click and name this layer. Draw. So I'm going to click and drag, and you can see that it's in black. Why is it painting in black? Because our fill, or our background color, is, our stroke or our background color is red. We don't want that. So let's go ahead and undo that. Hitting Control Z is the hotkey. And we are going to switch these. Again, we can use these little arrows right here, or we can hit X to switch them back and forth. Whatever is on top is what we're going to paint with. So we're going to paint with red. Looks pretty good. And then we're going to do one more layer here, and we're going to paint in with a blue. So we're going to paint in with blue right there. And you can see now that we have these two colors that are overlapping. Now they are on different layers, so you can see, and it looks very gradual, right? It looks very soft, but as I zoom in here, you can see that it really is just a bunch of pixels. That's actually a really good gradient. I like that gradient a lot. So we'll zoom out here a little aggressively, and you can change the way that layers interact with each other by changing something called the blending mode. And that's right above your layers panel. We're going to change this to multiply, and it will give you a live preview of what these layers are going to do as you scroll through here. They're basically going to augment each other. As you look, it's taking what is on top and interacting with what's on the bottom. So this blue is on top and the red is on the bottom. So as we scroll through here, you can see the interactions. And I really like the interaction of hard light. It looks a little bit neon, a little bit see-through. So you can play around with those two colors. So as you begin in Photoshop, you can paint something. You can create your own creation here, or you can go ahead and edit a photo, which is what Photoshop is really good for. That's why it's called Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a free website called stock.adobe.com/free. Make sure you have that /free on there. And stock.adobe.com/free gives you a bunch of free resources for us to play around with and augment. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to do portrait. I'm searching our free resources for a portrait that I might be able to use. And let's go ahead and let's use this portrait. So I'm going to hit license, and then it's going to allow me to download this. We have someone asking a question in our live chat. How would you categorize the mixer brush? The mixer brush is a bit of an advanced kind of brush, but since somebody asked, we'll talk about it. The mixer brush, I would categorize that, I don't know actually. But there are great resources for mixer brush. Type it on YouTube. I know that Paul Traney and Kyle T. Webster have great resources of how to use that. It's more of like a smudging drawing kind of thing. So with this image I just downloaded, all I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, go to open with, and then I can do open in Photoshop. Otherwise, we can come into Photoshop and go to File, Open, and we can open up, there's a bunch of my face, we can open up right there that stock. So now we have our photo. We've opened up our first document here in Photoshop. Now, I want to show you what some of these tools do here in Photoshop. There is a lot of adjustment that you can do, especially with photos, and we're going to do that using something called adjustment layers. Adjustment layers are right over here, and they are like this little circle with a slash through it. So next to where we created our new layer, we're going to go to adjustment layer, and from here, look at all these options. Again, when I talk about going in and learning on your own time, click on every single one of these. Go in, click on them, see what they do, and experiment, and that way you can understand a little bit better for yourself. Also, if you want to level up your Photoshop skills, every single day at 9 a.m. Pacific time, we have behance.net/Adobe Live Photoshop challenges. And the Photoshop challenges will help you level up your skills and learn new things. So coming back here, we can add one of these. And let's say that we want to make it a little bit brighter. We can go ahead and go to our exposure. And when we click on that, it's going to add this little layer right here. So this layer is editing everything below it. So as you click and drag, you can see that we have our properties panel. The properties panel is where you can change what's happening with a filter, with a tool, with a layer. Properties has a lot of different options for you to be able to customize your design. So let's take the exposure up just a little bit. And as I click and drag on this, you can see that it's affecting that layer, right? It's affecting everything below it. So that file that is below it is being affected by this exposure. So it looks pretty good to me. Next, what I want to do is I'm going to make a copy of this background layer. So I'm just going to hit Control or Command J, or I can right click and then hit duplicate layer. There we go. So I'm going to show you the selection tools in Photoshop real quick. They're really powerful, and they're something that you will use a lot to be able to grab something, move something, change something, paint in something. There are great selection tools. So we're going to come over here and use the magic wand. So the magic wand tool is great for very specific selections. So let's go ahead and zoom in to the eye here. And with this magic wand tool, we're going to select the magic wand tool. It's going to create a color. It's going to select a color range. So if I click on the eye, you can see that it's grabbing kind of a lot of different pieces because those are very, very similar. You can change the tolerance up here to maybe a lower number, and it will grab a smaller portion, right? So you can see that it's grabbing a little bit of a smaller portion. Let's go ahead and zoom out here and see what would happen if we just tried to select the background with the magic wand tool. When we click on it, it's going to select everything that is connected in white. So you can see some of the grays down here are a little bit changed, and it's done a pretty good job, but it only does, big word, contiguous selection. So we'll only grab sections that are touching. So this white that's in here is not being selected because it's not touching. So to add your selection, you can hold Shift and click to add into that selection. If you want to take away from that selection, you can hold Alt and click, and then it will take away that selection. So the selection is these little marching ants that you can see all around here. They are basically just outlining, right? And they're called marching ants. That is the technical term for it. You can see them kind of following that line, and that is your selection. So with the selection, let's go ahead and make a new layer. So we're going to click on plus right here, and we've made a new layer. Now we have this selection happening in the background. So if I try to paint on this image using that brush tool that we just looked at a second ago, where is my brush tool? Why have I lost? There it is, brush tool. There we go. So if I grab the brush tool that we just looked at a second ago and I click and drag, you can see that it's painting in. But because it's a selection, if we go close to the face, you can see that it's not going to paint in where our non-selected area is. If you want to know what is selected, you can grab that magic wand tool, and if you hover over and it's a white arrow, that means that it is selected. If it is the magic wand tool, it means that it is not selected. So this looks great. Let's go ahead and deselect this selection by right-clicking and going to deselect. You also can hit Control or Command D. And right here, it looks like we've got a little bit of weirdness happening with the face. So at a large size, you don't really notice, and that's fine. But we're going to delete our painting, and we are going to use a new selection tool, brand new to Photoshop, and we are going to click and hold on that magic wand and go to the Object Selection tool. You can see that it has these little arrows that are spinning. It's trying to find all the objects in this image. So if I click and hold over, you can see that it has found the woman as the object. And all I need to do with one click is click, and it will select that object. So I clicked on the woman, that it has a selection. It has selected that object. And all that I need to do now is I want to go ahead and delete the background. So right now we are selected on the woman. I can right click and go to select inverse, and that's going to select the background here. What I want to do is I'm just going to hit delete and delete that background. Now, you can't see anything because there's nothing behind it, but if I went in and I deselected, and we're going to create one more layer behind. So we're going to hit plus, and then from there, I'm going to fill it with this gorgeous blue color. So to fill something, we're going to use the paint bucket tool, another new tool, and we're going to click on the paint bucket tool and click on that background. Because we are selected on this layer, it's going to fill the entire layer with that color. So it looks like the edges are pretty okay here, but what we can do, we can go in and fix that using the eraser tool. So we're going to use the eraser tool by hitting E, and then just zooming in here. So there are a couple little places like in the hands that we may want to clean things up. So we're hitting Z for the zoom tool, and you can click and drag out to zoom out or click and drag in to zoom in. So we're gonna go ahead and erase some of this white. So we're gonna hit E or grab the eraser tool right here, and we're going to click and drag. We need to change the size by right clicking. Click and drag to erase. But it's erasing the blue. What's going on? Why is it erasing the blue? Because we are on the wrong layer. So you need to make sure that you have the layer selected that you're going to be using right here. So we are going to be using the image of this woman. So we're going to click on the image of the woman. And from here, as we start to erase, you can see that it's erasing out that backdrop. So I'm just going to erase out some of this white area right here using that eraser tool. And I'm simply clicking and dragging to erase some of that white. So we'll zoom out one more time. You can see that we have erased that white. We can turn this layer on and off, and she is completely separated from the background. Now, something else that you can do in Photoshop is you can add in text or typography. And we're going to do that text behind the woman, but in front of the background. This is going to give us a really cool kind of duo layer dimension kind of feel. So we're going to click on the T for our text tool, and we are going to click and we're just going to type in Photoshop because this is for beginners Photoshop. We are just going to type in the word Photoshop. Now it's a different color because it is blue. It is the foreground color that we had selected. All we need to do to change that color is to select all of our text and then come up here to our tool properties, right? When we looked here, all of our tool options are up on this bar. As we have different things selected, it will change what is on this bar. Now with the type tool selected, I've lost my type. I can click right here, double click on that T, and it will select all of my type. So we're gonna click and make this white in the background and hit OK. So now we want to transform. And there are a couple ways that you can do this. You can go to you can go to edit, you can go to transform, and then pick one of these options, or you can use a hotkey. And hotkeys just make it easier for you to work so you don't have to hit and click as many things. With the Photoshop selected, we can Control T or Command T, and then simply click and drag to blow up this type. So the type is getting much larger, and we're clicking and dragging to maybe bring it over to the corner. So to commit this transform, my goodness, we're going to hit enter. And it's going to commit that transform. So there we go. So now we are going to grab our layer of the woman, and we're going to click and drag it just so it's over a little bit of that area, right? So you can see the dimension that we're getting here as well. We can select our Photoshop layer and maybe bring it, and you can see that it moves behind the woman because of how the layers are interacting with each other. Now, let's say that I wanted to add some shadow. There's a very easy way to add effects and to add shadows here in Photoshop. All you need to do is select the layer that you want to add an effect to and right click and go to blending options. Now again, tons of different options for you to play around with here. And I'm going to actually bring this over to the side so that we can see what happens. So I want a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to go to drop shadow. So clicking on drop shadow, it is going to give me a little shadow around that edge. We can change how much by changing the opacity or changing the distance, which is how far it's going to go. The spread is going to make it so that it is tighter or it is kind of softer. And the size is going to make it so that it really gets a little bit softer around that edge. All right, so that looks pretty good. So we've got our drop shadow. We can also change the angle. I want it to go onto the actual kind of type here. So we're going to use that angle going at the bottom right into the top left. So we'll hit OK. And in here, again, there are all kinds of options for you to select and play around with. Let's say that we wanted an outer glow on this. We could click on outer glow and maybe we want it to be a different color. You can select that color and you can see now that we have a little pink outer glow. Looks fine. So play around with all of these and explore what they kind of do. So we're going to hit OK here, and we're looking all right on our composition. I think this looks pretty good. I do want to show you real quick how you can export this. So the way to export out of Photoshop so that you can post is go to File, Save a Copy, or you can go to Export and Export As. So I'm going to go to Export As just for fun. And it's going to bring up this window. So it's showing me all of the information that I need to know about my composition, right? It has the different ways that I can scale it. I'm going to do PNG just for now. It looks like the size is very, very, very large. So I'm going to scale it down just a little bit by going to maybe 50%. So it's scaling down for me. I don't have to go back and change anything. It is automatically going to scale that down for me. Canvas size looks good. Color space is all right. So we're going to hit export and it's going to ask us where we want that to go. Sure, let's put it in my downloads. We're going to hit save. Actually, let's name it test design. So we're going to hit save and it is going to export that file for me. From there, we have a great community that you can post your designs to. And hopefully if you are a beginner, this is your first time working in Photoshop, you can have a safe place to land. We're all learning at our own pace. We're all learning new things and trying new things as well. And there is a great place that you can go called Discord. There is a link in the description for you to join Discord for Photoshop. And it's a place where you can post your work. So I'll show you how to do that right now. We're going to go ahead and open up our downloads and we have our test design. I click and drag that into the Discord window. And from here, I can type in my first design in Photoshop and then hit enter. So it posted my composition. The first thing that I've done in Photoshop, I practiced masking, I practiced typography, I practiced blending modes, all kinds of good stuff in here, and I post in Discord. So if I want to, I can ask for feedback, and our great team of mentors will be able to give you feedback. It's a community. It's a place for you to land, to ask questions. You can even explore some of these other channels if you want to ask a question for advice, if you want some career advice, anything that you need is here happening in Discord. And I want you to go and create something and then post it in Discord, right? So what I want you to do, again, one more time, you need to follow these steps. 1, go to the description down in the bio that will give you this file. Go ahead and open up that file and familiarize yourself with how to use Photoshop. What are all the tools? What do they do? Try to make some new layers and paint on with them. Explore with maybe working with a layer style or a blending mode. And then I want you to go ahead and open up an image and extract something out of that image. Again, we used the object select tool. And someone in our live chat is asking a great question. PNGs only to be posted? No. So Discord will take pretty much anything. So you can do a PNG or a JPEG. So I'll show you, we can go to File, we can go to Save a Copy, and then we are going to save a copy as a JPEG right here. So there's all kinds of file formats. I would stay with a JPEG or a PNG. We're going to do Test Design 2 and hit Save. And from here, just go ahead and set these to whatever the default is. So 12, progressive, or if you're on standard, for what we're doing, it's not really going to matter. We're going to go ahead and just kind of use whatever settings. We're just looking for feedback here. So we'll hit OK. And PNG and JPEG, what is the difference is a great question. A PNG stands for Portable Network Graphic. PNGs can have transparent backgrounds. A JPEG does not have a transparent background. It will just be white. So if you need something that has a transparent background, you have to use a PNG. If not, just use a JPEG. It's easier, and usually the files are a little bit smaller. So with the JPEG, again, I can click and drag and just say, here is the JPEG as well. and post in Discord. And you can see already, we have some people that are giving me some feedback. We've got some thumbs up. We've got some encouragement happening there. And Enlightenment Swami is asking, which one is better, PNG or JPEG? I always export PNGs. I like the quality, and they don't depreciate it's portable network graphics. So it's made for sending and posting and using on the internet. Sometimes JPEGs will lose quality as you kind of copy and download and save them. So I usually use PNGs, but for what we're doing, you can use the JPEG. As always, I'm your host. I had a great time. I've never not had a great time. And I'm excited to teach you more this week in the bootcamp series. I believe tomorrow we're going into Adobe InDesign. So there's a lot of great content coming up in this playlist, in this series if you're watching the live streams. And if you're watching the replays, every day, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time at behance.net/Adobe Live, there's a challenge that is here to help you learn and level up your skills. I'll see you again for another challenge, another time. Have a fantastic day. Bye.